folks, welcome back to episode 12 of the Lockdown Podcast. A big thanks to Nathan McCabe, Alistair McSorley, David Linden and Ross Atkinson last week for coming on and talking about the future of the game and how it's going in Northern Ireland. So a big thank you to them. This week we have on wheelchair basketball journalist and commentator Dylan Cummings, the main man. And as per usual, we'll have our usual suspects with Danny and James. So thanks for coming back, guys. You keep coming back for more. So usually, Dylan, before we get started, we usually go with a thing called the weekly roundup, where we go around, see how everybody's doing, just check in and see how we're all going. So I suppose I'll start off, as I usually do. No haircuts. James, I've caught myself on, realised I'm not a barber, never going to be one. So I'm
going to come round in about a week and a half when I'm done with this quarantine.
Don't give me an opportunity. Do not give me an opportunity because it will mess your head up. I think the biggest thing for me this week is obviously Father's Day. So big shout out to Danny and all the rest of the dads out there. But homeschool is nearly over. I'm nearly done. Me and my wife are just like, please, we've one more week to go, just the end of this week, and we're good. We're done, because I am definitely not cut out for teaching. Thankfully. So my son's been complaining that I need to do some CPD before we can start up the homeschool again. So Danny, you're going to have to, being an ex-teacher yourself, you're going to have to help me out, mate. But so that's my short and sweet. I'm just excited about homeschool coming to an end. Danny, have you been getting on with little Elsie?
Yeah, good. No, she's doing well. Father's Day, I suppose, is the thing I want to talk about, and Phil, obviously, you mentioned it, but Father's Day this year was obviously special, first one. But it was not just special for that. It was special because Leeds United were playing on the TV. Now, anyone who's been following the podcast will know that we've all lusted after football, watched Bundesliga, watched everything we can. And this was the week where Leeds United were coming back. Now, I loved Leeds United before I loved my wife, before I loved my daughter, before I loved my car. So Leeds United's a long thing for me. But for some reason, I forget they can lose. And that's exactly what happened. So I sat down, we sat there, Father's Day, best day ever, this is great, love this. Lost 2-0. Absolutely, an absolute nightmare. Ruined the rest of the day, rained all day, absolute shocking. So, yes, it was a lovely day, first one, but actually, scratched beneath the surface. It was all right. So there you go. Oh. So no, it was good. I suppose the other thing as well is we had a bit of a gap from the podcast. We had a bit of a gap week, and I'm actually really glad to be back. So it's good to see you all.
I'm glad to hear it, buddy. I'm glad to hear it.
Well, I see you all the time, James. I'm really glad to see you, Dylan.
Oh, thanks. It's good to be back.
But Danny, I don't know what losing really feels like at the moment. You know, being a Liverpool fan, so it was good to see them back against Everton. But we were shopping, man, absolutely shopping. But was I glad to see red against blue? Yes, it definitely was, 100%.
Yeah.
Dylan, man, how are you getting on? We haven't obviously, seen you too much over the lockdown period. We've been catching up with things that you've been doing with different journalism and sort of with roles and different things that you've been doing and pieces and articles. But how have you been getting on from a personal perspective?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to thank you guys for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
No, 100%, man.
I wish I could relate to your football talk, but to be quite honest, I'm not the biggest football fan.
Maybe Phil.
But yeah, lockdown has been quite tough. Obviously, not having basketball. I had a lot of things planned. I was meant to go to the Champions League Final Four at Landale, and obviously, basically everything's been cancelled. So it's been tough. But I've tried to make the most of it with articles on Rolt about various lockdown stuff a few months ago, and then most recently an interview with a legend of the game, Joey Johnson, on the IPC classification controversy. So that was really good. Obviously, he's a legend of the game, and he's really good at giving interviews, and it gets a lot of people talking, which is really good.
Yeah, no, 100%. He's a big guy as well. He's not one to argue with, is he? He's top man, is Joey. But yeah, I think we've all been kind of looking at it and with interest in terms of your development as you went through, and it's mad to see that you're up interviewing top players and top guys from either the past or the future and the present, to be fair. So that's been really, really exciting. But thanks for coming on, and you know, it's going to be a good podcast about Thursday. James, how have you been getting on, dude? I think
I've
you have
been
some
all right.
for us.
New background because I'm back in Belfast. Yeah, living the dream. We've had to travel back there. That's why there was no recording last week, and it's good to be back. We travelled back sort of last minute and are currently in the middle of our 14-day absolute quarantine in my sister's apartment, which is nice. I've chucked her out. She's back living with my dad so that they're both allowed to go to work, because that was the only way we could figure out how to maneuver it, really. And it's great. It's a lovely apartment, good location. There's guitars here. My dad dropped off some food and my PlayStation yesterday, and I have managed to go nearly a full day without plugging it in, which is some absolute 10 out of 10 restraint from myself. But yeah, no, it's grand. I'm just trying to get used to not sweating all the time and not just wearing shorts. And yeah, I haven't been outside, so I haven't been shocked by the weather a whole lot yet. Obviously I have to be outside for bits and pieces to go and to get out of the car to come here, for example. But yeah, so I've not been too shocked by the weather, but I think I will be next week when I'm allowed out. But yeah, apart from that, no, just getting settled, trying to get a couple of bits of training done, and I've got some dumbbells and stuff here. Finally, my dad dropped over some heavy stuff. My fiance's parents dropped over some weights as well, so I've got a good wee collection here. So I'm finally get yoked again, which I'm looking forward to. But yeah, no, I'm just kind of happy to be back and very excited to have Dylan on the podcast. I was on a podcast with myself, Mark Schofield from the Bench Units podcast. We're on with Dylan and Jack Gibbs from, is it the High Rollers on Upstream Media?
Yeah, the Upstream Media live stream, it's like a joint production between Upstream Media and High Rollers. So yeah, that was fun.
So that was great fun. So us two went on with them too, and we watched the World Championship final back and talked about it. And I spent so much time talking about Tom Smith, and I don't even know why. He wasn't there, obviously. I just like talking about Tom Smith, apparently. But yeah, no.
About Tom Smith.
Yeah, everyone loves to. But yeah, just really excited to have Dylan back for a bit of, an intro. Phil let me take this one because me and Dylan are probably a little bit closer than he is to anyone else in this podcast. Dylan is at the forefront of wheelchair basketball media, whether that's written or commentary, which is so impressive. Doing both is just nuts. He was commentating at the World Championships. He's writing for Rolt. He's here, there, and everywhere. He's interviewing people at Champions Cup. He's the man who gets interviews with Joey Johnson. He's the guy who broke the story about me going to Gran Canaria before I did on my own podcast. This, yeah, needs no introduction, but I'm doing it anyway. Yeah, Dylan Cummings. How are you? You happy to be here? No.
Yeah, I'm grand, thanks, mate. And yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for that great introduction.
No worries. So just to start, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got involved, one in wheelchair basketball and then in the media side of it?
Yeah, sure. Apologies if I ramble on a bit.
Don't worry about it. We all do, mate. We all do.
All right. So I grew up on the Isle of Islay, which is a rural island in the Scottish Highlands. It's like a small population, 3,500, and I lived there till I was about 14. Wasn't a very sporty kid, and then my mum decided that she wanted a change, so she moved to Carlisle, just over the border, and she looked up a wheelchair basketball team online and found the Carlisle Panthers, which at the time they were a Division 2 team. So I went along to their junior/development session. Was at Carlisle for about three and a half years. Learned a lot there from great players. And then I went to uni at Worcester to study journalism. And obviously at the time that was where the GB program was. And then I was there for about 3 years. got a 2-1 in my degree, in my undergrad degree, which I'm very proud of. And then after uni, I got a job working at Basketball Scotland as their digital communications assistant, and I'm currently in that role now, living in Edinburgh. So yeah, that's been really good. In terms of journalism, I first got involved in journalism by going to uni, and then I first got in contact with the IWBF, done some writing for them, and then there was an opportunity to go to the World Championships. Like I had to self-fund it myself, but there was still an opportunity to go. The head of media at the Worlds was the editor of Rot, and then I showed him, because I'd done like writing, like interviews for IWBF, I'd done like blogs for BWB, stuff like that. So I showed him all that, and then I said to him that I'd also be interested in doing commentary. I'd never done any commentary before. It was just something that I've always wanted to do. So he took a chance, put me on commentary, and then it goes from there, really. Obviously the commentary got a lot of people talking, both good and bad. And then after the Worlds, I said to Martin that I'd like to continue to work for Rolt, and he basically put me on charge in sorting out all the English speaking content for the magazine. So I've now developed Rolt's following in like the UK, Canada, America, Australia, and yeah, it's basically just continued from there.
That sounds like a crazy kind of journey. Dylan,
Yeah.
when you mentioned about coming, and I know that you love wheelchair basketball, you've played. I actually remember you playing at school games as well. I just had a wee quick question about there's one or two people that I know that I'm aware of, but who would you say had the kind of biggest impact on you? Was it somebody like a legend like Tina Gordon, who we all know, and she's been about the sport for years? Did people like that have an impact and maybe and shaping you towards journalism to a certain extent?
Yeah, and like, I can't believe I forgot to mention this part. I shouldn't really understate this, but when I was at Carlisle and the Junior Championships tournament was coming around, the team manager for Carlisle said that I should try it for the Scotland team because of my Scottish heritage. And so I went to the trials and immediately got on well with the team, met a legend like Tina Gordon, was on the junior squad for 3 years, and my love for that squad really propelled my passion for wheelchair basketball. Like, I remember going to my first junior tournament and like that was the first time I'd ever seen people my age, like so many juniors, play basketball at the same time, and I remember just being amazed. That was at Stoke Mandeville, and then so yeah, like playing for Scotland really ignited my passion, and then Tina also saw that I had a passion for media, so she made the contacts with IWBF, and then through IWBF I've made contacts with the likes of Roll and so on. So yeah, Tina Gordon is the reason why I am where I'm at right now. So yeah.
Yeah, she's a pretty special woman in terms of the development she's done within Scotland and across wheelchair basketball, to be fair to her. So the woman's just a power of nature, let's put it that way, in terms of helping people and just doing lots of good things for other people than probably herself, to be honest with you. But another sort of side of it, where did you talked about that interest in journalism? Where did that drive come from? Outside of Tina, like what was that internal thing that you had going on?
Like I don't know. Like I've always been passionate about media and like promoting the sport. Like I remember the very first things I'd done was like write match reports for the club I was at, and stuff like that. And then it was like I knew I wanted to go to Worcester to like sort of like my initial goal was to try and get involved in the media side of the GB program. So I knew I wanted to go there, and then. But I didn't really know what course I wanted to study. And my mum's a English teacher, and I've always been like good at English and good at like expressing my views and expressing the how do I put this? Expressing viewpoints through like writing. So she was the one that suggested journalism. So and then I looked into it more. I looked into like what journalism actually was, and then I just decided to go for it, and it's really helped.
Yeah.
Happy days. Do you remember? Here's a weird question. Do you remember the first game you ever commentated on? Do you remember what it was, and what do you remember about it?
Yeah, I remember it was the GB women against Canada at the Worlds. That was like the first official proper like commentary game. I don't remember anything specific about that game, but I just remember like being like really, really excited about it and like getting to convey my passion for the game, and like after seeing the feedback online, like I'm glad I done it, because I'm glad it was well received and the majority of people enjoyed it. So.
Yeah. I did. I mean, myself and Phil sat there last summer and watched in our boardroom and listened to your commentary, and we loved it, didn't we? We spoke about it quite a bit, and then obviously I know we've spoken a couple of times since then and chatted about that as well. Just from a different angle, slightly, I suppose. One of the things that myself and Phil were very keen on early doors within the club scene was that there was like a media presence, and obviously Callum Warren, who you've met, voice of Wales basketball in our little part of the world, is obviously the man who does the kind of commentary game days and announcements, things like that. How important do you think media presence is at games to create that environment, that atmosphere?
It's so important. It grows the game. It grows the game in that specific area. You know, if you do media coverage of a game or of an organisation or whatever, and you know, you then take it to like newspapers, even if it's just local newspapers or like even the smallest outlet you can think of it, and that they pick up on it and they try and spread the word. Even if you inspire just one person to play the game, to come and watch a game or whatever, it makes the world of difference.
Totally. No, it definitely does. And I think that's what we're starting to see. We've got a couple of clubs who do kind of really good media stuff and film games and put highlights on and stuff like that. But I think you're right. It's about that almost flooding the information so that it seeps through and gets to the relevant people. But would there be any, from your experience with the Panthers at Carlisle and things like that, would there be anything per se that you would advise clubs would do or could do?
Get themselves set up on every social media platform you can think of. Mm-hmm. Match reports are like probably the most fundamental thing. Player interviews, player profiles, and these things. Well, if you invest like a little bit of time in, they don't. Well, certainly for me, they don't take that long to do. So, I mean, it'll take a bit to get it all set up, but once you've got it set up, it's just a case of adding to it. So
yeah, no, totally. I mean, obviously, the Carlisle thing you said about the match reports being fundamental to you starting this whole journey, you know. Yeah. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and also like the other thing I would say is like, well, this is something that I'm currently doing just now is I'm trying to look into like the pro clubs, like the Turinga Bulls, like Landale, and like their clubs are like actually like a business. There's a whole business behind Landale.
Yeah.
And like I'm like looking behind that business to see how they like make it work. And I think that if obviously I know that the UK league isn't a pro league, so it presents some difficulties, but if people take the time to like look at the business side and see how sport is run as a business, I think it would benefit their club greatly.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think there's a certain element of, if you have good media coverage around the sport of wheelchair basketball, it kind of legitimizes the whole thing. Like if you imagine, pick a world championship game and watch it without the commentary, with just a bit of crowd noise, versus with the commentary, and it's just a completely different thing. It feels like it takes it from watching a sport to like a real experience. And I think when you add in all the, as you said, the match reports, like a good Twitter for a team, a good Instagram account, I think is probably the most important social media at the minute for that. Like, what are there any clubs in particular, whether that's in the UK or in Europe, that are doing it really well that you would point people to, like other clubs could follow?
I'm trying to think of any UK clubs. All of them are fairly decent in the UK.
Yeah.
They've got. I mean, it's not like the top level, but it's decent for like the standard in the UK. And then I would just refer to like Landale. Landale's probably the biggest one in terms of like media, and then like Hanover, the touring clubs. I think I would say that Spain has the best league in terms of quality, but I think in terms of the way clubs are like run as a business, Germany has got the edge.
Yeah. I suppose from our point of view, definitely for me and Danny, we talked about the importance of social media and the presence out there in regards to just from a wheelchair basketball perspective, certainly anyway. When we were going in and we do a lot of talks with physios and the OTs within Northern Ireland, and when we were sort of speaking to those guys, asking, when was the last time that you actually, picked up a newspaper, clicked on the whatever sports media website it may be, and you seen a person there with a certain type of disability or a disability at all, and it was fairly slim, in regards to when they last seen that. It happens every 4 years, obviously, with the Paralympics. But I think if you can build a social media presence, then the more young people will be aware of what they have on their doorstep, so they can come along to a club. And it's almost a great recruitment tool in a sense. That's where I see it as well as growing the game and the kind of face of the game as well. I think it's a great tool for getting people interested early doors and then pushing them towards clubs. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, definitely, mate. And again, sorry to ramble on, but I want to address a few points before I forget about them. So I think like you say, Phil, like the number one thing, like regardless of anything else, is like getting new players to come along. Doesn't matter what level they are at. Yeah. The more new players that you can get, the better. So it doesn't matter how you go out and get them, and Phil, with yourself, like I know that you're, and Danny probably does as well, but I know that you for years, you've gone into different setups and like tried to recruit players, and I think clubs need a guy like that who's willing to go out into various outreach programs to recruit players. And not only that, but I've noticed that you're fantastic at getting funding for the sport, so that clubs really need someone who's business savvy, who's willing to go and speak to these big companies, sell the sport to them, tell them why they should invest money in the sport, stuff like that. So I think that that's fantastic, and clubs should really invest in people like that.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's probably music to your ears as well, because I don't know whether you know this or not, Dylan, but Danny's actually travelled across the Holland and Germany. Do you want to give a wee bit of info on that, Danny, in regards to how that came about?
Yeah, we've spoken about it in previous podcast episodes a little bit, and it was really insightful. It really was, and I think one of the things that we're quite keen to do here in Northern Ireland is look at other places. I don't think you can ever replicate what someone else is doing, because the context is totally different, the culture is different, the way life is different. I mean, James, your life's very different here to Spain. Purely the daylight hours, probably
freezing.
Yeah, freezing. But but I do think there are things to learn, and I totally echo what you think in terms of the business side of it. And I think even at amateur level, and this is for any sport, from my field experience of sport, if clubs think like clubs, or think like sports clubs, they're probably going to be in trouble at some point along the road. To think more business-like, it's a different kettle of fish, because you're starting to think in real terms, and in terms of finances, and in terms of future proofing and future planning. But that's what I witnessed when I went away. But that's one of the things that we're very open to, is look at other countries and other models and other clubs, and we've got a nice situation here as well, where obviously just down south there's a league there and a set up there as well. So we myself and Phil go down and have been with those guys a couple of times. They've come to us, and so we're very open to that, and we've seen some really cool stuff. And you cherry pick, don't you? You cherry pick, what you like and what you think fits and what doesn't fit, and So no, it's great what you say, absolutely.
Yeah.
I suppose that the other thing we've talked about, trying to create a better environment within our own domestic league, and we were lucky enough to get a sponsor. We're perennials this year, or last season, should I say, which was fantastic, and it just added that touch of professionalism to it. The players are buzzing.
Definitely.
We were able to get new equipment in. Referees look well. The whole sort of setup around it. But I'm really, really interested in terms of What's been your best game experience up to now from a it can be from a a spectatorship point of view or from a commentary point of view, or both really?
The best game I've ever seen?
The best game that you, or best atmosphere, best game that you've kind of witnessed or commentated on?
Well, I think firstly, in terms of my playing, I think when we won the bronze medal at the school games, when Scotland was the first ever home nation to win a medal at the school games, that was an incredible experience. In terms of commentary, favourite game, it's a tough one. Honestly, I know this sounds like cliche, but every game that I've done at the Worlds and every game that I've done at the Euros last year, there's no specific one that I can choose.
Yeah.
So, and then spectatorship, probably probably the Worlds final, just like seeing GB win that gold medal, being in the crowd, and it was just crazy.
That was the best game I've ever watched too. Now we're getting into that. We're getting into the fun stuff. Well, this has all been fun, but we're getting into the stuff that I'm just getting really excited for. What's the best individual performance you've ever seen live, like commentating or watching or whatever? Like,
what, like live? Like in the arena, or like live watching on a computer screen?
In person, we'll narrow it down. Like, have you ever been in a sports hall for a game that you just left being like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy just did that?
I can't not talk about Harry Brown and that incredible performance.
Correct.
Just
World Championship final?
Yeah, just absolutely incredible. And then another one, I wasn't there live for this one, but it was the Champions League last year. Jake Williams and Teddy Bywater, Teddy having a 32-point game, Jake with 37. And it was just... Turinga were like really pulling away with it. Like Jake had like 14 points in 3 minutes, and then Teddy just almost pulled it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, incredible.
I've got a question for you in terms of players. Have you got anybody that they keep an eye out on? A bit of a dark horse that you've seen in Europe that maybe people aren't aware of. From we know that we're familiar with all the GB guys, the majority of the American squad. Is there anybody out there that you're kind of like, yeah, he's going to be a worldly?
It really is hard to like narrow it down to one, but I think
give me as many as you can then.
I think outside of GB, obviously you've got like the ones that people do know about, like Matt Scott, Steve Serio, Pat Anderson, people like that. But I think, and I get a lot like James will know who this guy is because he's played against him at juniors and that. But I think Tommy Boomer from Germany is a phenomenal player, and I would encourage like anyone, whether that's fans from the sport in the UK or wherever, to like watch the global game. Like there's obviously great players in GB, the best national team in the world. Not going to argue with that, but there are so many phenomenal players from all over the world that I don't think a lot of people from GB really look at, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm going to pick up on that point, actually. I think that's really, really prevalent. I think if you take our context here, obviously our clubs, barring one, are relatively new to the sport. I think when you get into a stage now where people are familiar with big names, Pat Anderson, Steve Serio, for example, and we see that clubs are starting to, like, we talk about the media resharing their clips on YouTube and things like that, which is pretty cool. But I think one of the things you spoke about early doors was about rope. Yeah. And I think rope is such a unique and special thing. I don't know if you want to tell us a bit more about what rope is and what it kind of covers and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's hard to like narrow it down. Like
it is, yeah.
Yeah, like obviously, like the primary focus of the magazine before I got involved, like a lot of it was German content, as it's German based. Yeah. There's still a lot of German content that goes out there, but what I do is I really take over the English speaking side and sort of grow the audiences in different countries. So what I primarily do is in terms of written content is just interviews. I do obviously like different forms of interviews, but mainly it's just interviews with just all these different English speaking players, and I really try and grow the game and sort of I try and get a sense of the person.
Yeah.
In the interview, rather than just the athlete, and
Yeah.
I try and make my interviews sound like quite personal.
Yeah.
So that, yeah. So
I think it's sorry, James. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think it's such a relevant thing because you said there about watching the wider game, the global game, and not just focus on what's in either Northern Ireland or the UK or whatever. But I think Rot's a part of that. I think it's such a unique thing because it's the only kind of magazine out there relevant to the sport. Where you look at football, rugby, each club's got their own magazine. I think you know what I mean. So I think it's such a brilliant thing and something that we is probably not so much known about within the wider context, I guess, and that would get you that global game here. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and like just going back to what I was saying earlier, like if you're a guy who's playing at a like local level in GB, and you idolize the GB players, then that's fine. Like I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I like from experience, like so I became like as soon as I got involved with the sport, I became engrossed with the sport, and then I started studying the UK scene, like the ins and outs of it, and then sort of grew my knowledge of the international scene. Like even before I went to Worlds, like years before, I always used to watch like Champions Cup when they had live streams, and then like obviously when I went to the Worlds, I'm not gonna lie, I was heavily biased towards GB because I did know their program inside out.
We loved it.
Cheers, man. But like since then, like I've had the opportunity to go to Champions League, go to all these different countries and see have personal relationships with all these different players and be able to call these players friends, and that's really helped me in my experience. So I would encourage as many people, like for example, if you're like I don't know, say 18, and you want to go and watch the top level, and you've got the finances to I don't know have a weekend in Germany or whatever. Go out and do it if you really want to. Just like go out and be a fan. Like my biggest thing is don't ever try and like get rid of your fandom because it's part of who you are, like and stuff like that. So.
Yeah,
that's absolutely like you're bang on there. And one thing I wanted to ask is like, how do you go from Dylan Cummings, Carlisle Panthers 1-point player, to a guy that can message Joey Johnson and say, I've got a couple of questions for an interview, and he gets back to you? Like, because do you feel like, was there a certain element of having to prove yourself and prove your knowledge of the game? Because I, from knowing you, know that you're a basketball fan who knows how to put it on paper. Like I've spent, yourself, like these two probably don't know this, but in lockdown, Dylan would phone me and Rose Hollerman while I was living in Gran Canaria and just be like, right, who do you think's better, this person or this person? Or
yeah.
Who do you think's the most underrated three-pointer in the world? Or just mad questions. Like I've spoken to Dylan about weird basketball things at like 11:30 at night on a random Tuesday before. Like, is it like, did you find you have to like prove yourself, or how do you go from writing match reports for Panthers to getting interviews with whoever you want in the world of wheelchair basketball?
Right. I don't really. I'll try and explain it the best I can, but the honest answer is I don't really know how it happened. But basically is well I'll just be honest. So like the year before the World, I was going through quite a difficult time with like my mental health. And then so the opportunity, I was writing for IWBF at the time, and they said there's an opportunity to go to the Worlds, but you'd have to self-fund it. And like obviously it was a lot of money, but I just thought, if I want to make this work, I'm going to go and do it. So I just thought, I'm just going to go and do it. And I went and done it. And obviously Martin took a chance on me with commentary. I believe the majority of it paid off. And then like it just took off with Rob. I don't know how, like, because obviously, like, I don't have to, like, email. I can literally just add Joey Johnson on Facebook and message him, and he'll get back to me. Like, it just happened. Like, obviously, I could do my, like, Joey Johnson wasn't the first interview I ever done. Like, I'd done like other players before I got to players of that caliber, but it just sort of happened. And like, I think, like, I know that I'm quite a like genuine person. Like, I'd say I'm fairly nice to everyone, and I've got the ability to get on well with the majority of people. So I just guess it boils down to that, really. But I'm not really sure.
Yeah, they're the two big things that come across like straight away. You're like a great guy that loves basketball, and that's like if you've got someone who's like you're going to put like a good genuine interview and you're going to do your best to put what the person answering the questions across. If you're going to try and put that across as genuinely as possible and you just love the game, like I think that's kind of that seems to be what follows, and it's really cool to see that like people now know who Dylan Cummings is from articles, and like you can get interviews off the players you named as like people like players that other kids will want to watch and people will want to watch and learn from, or people that you can just be like, hey, I've got a couple of questions, do you fancy answering that? So that's absolutely that it's been class to see. Like I've been a Dylan Cummings fan from day one, but it's nice to see that everyone else is there now as well.
Yeah, 100%. Because I actually remember speaking to Tina that this was going way back, Dylan. And she was explaining to me about your love for the media and the direction that she felt that you could go in with a level. Let's not forget, let's not mess about that you're a talented young person as well. So there's that into the bargain too. You know, when you put talent with a person who's genuine and then loves the game of basketball, people want to gravitate around you, and people are willing to then bring you into their lives to then portray what they're trying to put across. So that's a talent in itself, in my opinion, anyway. So don't be downplaying your skill set or anything like that. But while we're being reflective, I was just going to ask you, what was your kind of like best interview? What was your best performance? Like, when did you think, so your best interview and you were thinking, yeah, I'm on to something here?
Yeah. Right. Sorry, Phil. Just to go back to what I was saying earlier, I just feel that it's important to say this, and I don't want to not say it before it goes out of my head. But I'd say one of the biggest things I do in my interviews is I'm quite a trustworthy person. So like before I send out an interview, I always check with the person if they're all right with it, and 9 times out of 10 they're happy with it. If they want me to make some changes, I'll make them before it goes out. And like, for example, if they tell me I don't know, a secret or whatever, but I know that if it gets published, this person will get in trouble.
Yeah.
And I'll not put anything that will look bad on them, and or not look bad, but I'll not put anything that will, I don't know,
jeopardize their career or something like that.
Yeah. I wouldn't say jeopardize their career, but like something that they won't get told off by, I don't know, their federation or whatever.
Yeah. No, 100%. So what about performance wise? When did you when was your first interview where you went, that was gold, like that was fire?
Yeah, so I'd say, well, I categorize it in two things. So there's written interviews and video interviews. So I'd say written interviews, the two I've done with Joey Johnson have been really good. I think the first one with Joey Johnson is Rolt's most read interview ever. I think he got like over 100 shares.
Yeah.
And like over 1,000 views, which for wheelchair basketball is massive.
Yeah.
And then the other one I'd mention is probably Rose Holloman. I've done 2 interviews with her. She always gives really good, detailed answers. Sometimes with interviewees, they give a really good answer for one question and then a one-line answer for another, and I have to go back to them and tell them to add more if they wouldn't mind. But with the ones with Rose and Joey, they always give like really detailed answers, and they're really good, and like they're also really personal, and I feel that they can connect with the reader.
Yeah, 100%. It comes across as well when you read it, when it just kind of flows off the page, and you can almost hear Joey speaking because you haven't tried to, manipulate words. It's just his personality coming across, especially the stuff around the classification things that are going on at the moment. But I suppose the other one would be best performance from a commentary point of view.
Yeah, so sorry, just to go back to your previous question, the best video interview I've done is probably Matt Scott. I remember interviewing Matt Scott in February and just being like, holy moly, it's mascot, like just like you're like heart was racing and everything. But yeah, it was really cool. And he'd been following my stuff, and he was like, oh, it's great to finally talk to you and stuff like that. So it means a lot that like everyone, and well, not everyone, but the majority of the community, like they know my stuff and things like that. But
yeah, 100%.
So sorry, what was the question about commentary?
And then commentary, what was your best performance in commentary? What's kind of been your like proudest moment, funniest moment, whatever it may be?
Oh, like again, it's hard. I mean, because at the Worlds, like it was very raw and it was very passionate, which partly I'm proud of, but also partly it's a learning experience because like on some games I was just going absolutely mental, which the majority of people loved, but like I needed to learn that I needed to like calm it down and just like not get so hyper. But I'd say the next year at the Euros, I didn't change my style, but I sort of calmed it down a bit. And I'd say that probably the proudest one I'd done was the most professional one I'd done was probably the women's final last year between GB and the Netherlands.
Yeah.
That's really important. It's like difficult, but super important to be reflective about this sort of stuff, like, and try and get better. And it's very easy for people to do that when they come off a court in a basketball game, but for you to just walk away from commentating, take the headphones off and go, cool, happy days, no one could blame you. But like, to be able to go back and look at what you're doing and go, okay, maybe if I tweak this and whatever, that's only going to stand you in good stead for the rest of your commentating days. But no, we all loved it, and like the screaming and the shouting and the Terry Bywater for three, and we all absolutely loved that. And I want to know if the catchphrases and the cash monies and stuff, if they were organic or whether you kind of had those in the back of your mind, because
like there was times where I came back from a game and I did think about things briefly. Like I did think about, if Helen Freeman hit a three, she'd be Helen Freeman. So I sort of came up with that. And then that one there, it's not the top of the morning, but it was the top of the key. That was literally because you hit the shot from the top of the key. So
I've given you enough stick about that one. Well, no, that's the thing, because I think you've got like the perfect sort of mix, I would say, out of like a lot of the commentators. There's either like this great basketball knowledge or the presentation skills and the sort of the charisma and the sort of, the catchphrases and the getting a bit excited about stuff. But you're you've got the mix of both, which is nice to see, because I've seen countless basketball games where they get someone in who can commentate and has a career in media, but they've watched How to Play Wheelchair Basketball refresher YouTube video for 3 minutes, and that's all the knowledge they have. They're asking more questions about the rules and stuff. So I'm excited to see that there's people who know what they're talking about who can also commentate coming in the door now.
Yeah, 100%. I suppose a question, because we've talked a wee bit about a reflection piece, and I did have wrote down here, advice that you would give your younger self, and it sounds like reflection would be one. But would you, if you were to go back and you could get back into the Panthers sort of training session, have a wee whisper in your ear, what would the advice be? Is there anything you would?
Like from the very beginning of my career?
Well, just in terms of your any times you felt that maybe, can I do this? Is this realistic? A period or phase that was hard in your life, and you've went back and maybe just few wee words of wisdom in terms of just digging in.
Yeah, like I remember I used to be really, really hard on myself as a player. Like I'll be honest with you, like I'm not the best player in the world. Obviously with CP, it's a difficult disability to have in wheelchair basketball. Not many people with CP reach the top level.
Yeah.
So like I used to be disappointed when I didn't make squads and stuff like that. And then Tina suggested the media, and at first I was hesitant because I still like wanted to be a player. But honestly, since going to the Wild, since doing that commentary, like obviously I still want to train it and keep fit. But like if I never play a game again, or I'll put it this way, like if I play a game again, like an actual 40-minute game. I don't want to play a serious game. I'd much rather just have a laugh. But I'm totally content with the stuff that I do know, which I wasn't beforehand. So I'm glad that I'm content with that sort of stuff.
I think that's a really, really interesting point. I think when people get involved with sport, and we've seen this a little bit over the last while, I think people go, I'll get involved with that sport, but there's only a playing. That's not the case. There's the media side of things, refereeing side of it, officiating, whatever. And you know yourself, both of you two boys, Dylan and James, that a club requires so many people, so many good people in different capacities, different roles, and whether that club is an amateur club, a kids club, a professional club, it requires so many bodies. So that's really encouraging to hear that actually, although maybe one pathway, I don't want to say ends, because it doesn't really end, but one pathway closes off, say, another door opens, there's another door, do you know what I mean? The sport's got so many different facets to it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like, my goal is to, like, sort of create a pathway for wheelchair basketball media. Because, like, well, I'll tell you, like, a personal story it still affects me to this day, but it's probably fueled me with motivation. But I remember it was one of my very first sessions, and like, I guess things do pay off, because like I'm in a much better position, and this guy that said this horrible comment isn't really anywhere anymore. So I remember going to my first sessions. I was like 14, 15, and then there was this guy. I'm not going to name him, but he was like nearly 30 at the time. And I remember that he said to me, "You're too disabled for the sport. Go home, kid." And I remember that, like, that really affected me, and it still affects me to this day.
Yeah.
But, sorry, it's kind of hard to talk about.
It's okay. Take your time.
Take your time.
Hey, fine, man.
But like, how do I explain this? Like, yeah, like I've sort of created my own pathway, and I'm very fortunate that I'm sort of like the very first guy to almost do this.
Yeah.
So it's sort of paid off in a way, and yeah, I'm glad it's paid off, and like I'm well known, well respected in the community, and like I've not had to be anything that I'm not. Like I am like just a decent person to majority of people. So
Absolutely.
I'm glad it's sort of paid off. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And I suppose from our end of things, we've got a whole new crop of people coming in with the new domestic league and different bits and pieces that are going on. The growth and development within Northern Irish wheelchair basketball has been massive in the last while. And would you have any advice for anybody who has that kind of either that similar pathway to you, or else is interested in maybe the journalism side of things, but because they have a disability and they don't have a massive representation within sport from a disability side of things? Would you have any advice for those guys?
what advice for people that want to go down the same pathway?
Yeah, get involved with journalism or take a different route to have ideas in their head. Would you have any encouragement for them?
Well, yeah, I certainly think, like, if you've got a player coming along that you know they're not going to be like the best player in the world, right? I'm not saying discourage them from playing. Like, obviously, get them to a level that they're comfortable playing at, and who's to say that if they really put the work in, they could get to a level that higher than you expected of them. But certainly, casually suggest that there's other routes to go into if you see the potential, if you see that, all right, they might not be physically the best athlete, but like mentally, that they're quite sharp.
Yeah.
So I would certainly suggest to clubs to try and encourage players to like go into other outlets of the sport, or ask them if they're interested or stuff like that. But,
yeah. And what about somebody who maybe isn't on that similar journey that you have just described? Somebody who just has a general interest in maybe social media side of things, or from a commentary perspective or a journalistic perspective. Is there any important things that you would advise them to kind of go down, or would it just be a matter of throwing yourself into it and immersing yourself?
Yeah. Throw yourself into it. Do whatever you feel comfortable. Obviously, like, look into the basics of like reporting, journalism, that sort of stuff. But for me, is always be yourself, always be nice and kind and decent to people, and always be trustworthy. Like, for example, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. If someone tells you something that's confidential, don't then go and publish that in the media to try and draw attention to yourself, because you've broke a story. Because that's not only damage your trust with the athlete, but it will also stop people coming forward to you.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. That's great advice. And anybody listening out there that maybe has an idea of they want to go in a different direction, or they have thoughts of becoming a journalist, don't let any barriers get in your way, and just crack on, be a good person, be yourself. I suppose there's no other way, you can do things. And it's great to hear, in terms of your journey and going through that. But I suppose I'm going to focus a wee bit on maybe the future. Where do you see yourself going, man? Like what's next for Dylan? Where do you see things panning out for you, or what's the dream scenario?
Well, in terms of right now, I'm happy working with Basketball Scotland. I'd say the dream would be to work as a media manager for a pro club. I've been a big fan of Landale for many years. I'd say that would be sort of the dream club to work for. But really just any pro club. I think the challenges that I face is obviously a lot of these pro clubs are in Spain, Germany. So like, I've been taking the opportunity to learn basic German. It's not that great. Like it's very, very minute. But I hope there's more media opportunities to open up within the sport. And I would love to see every team, every pro team, or every team in general to have like a sort of media manager.
Yeah.
I think that would be great for the sport.
100%. I suppose you're blazing the trail for most people, aren't you? Especially from a GB perspective, anyway. From people from Great Britain. So fair play to you. And Danny, can you sort some lessons out for Dylan? I seen a wee cheeky smile there, Dylan. By the way, Danny can speak a bit of German, and he wasn't going to say anything, but he does cheap rates on the old tutoring, apparently. So
well, listen, I think it'll be the way around. I think I'll be taking the lessons, Dylan, to be honest. Yeah, she said yours was minute. Mine was less than minute, but I'm not smart enough to know what that is in quantifiable terms. But no, that's amazing, and I just think that the real interesting thing about that is the way the sport's moving professional-wise. James, you made a comment a few podcasts ago in the last 3 months since we've been doing this, somewhere along the line, about how the sport's relatively young in grander terms, but then also the professionalisation of it's younger again. Yeah. But actually, obviously, that's the way that major leagues have headed and are heading. So I think that aims at a totally realistic one as the sport develops, mate. Totally.
Yeah. Listen, we're gonna kind of wrap up here. It's been fantastic, Dylan, to kind of have you on. But before we do like, have you got an Insta or a Twitter handle that you can shout out there? James is always on it every week. He's trying to put numbers in, and so if anybody wants to get in touch with you, Dylan, has any questions, could you give us an idea how they can get in touch with you, dude?
Yeah, of course. So Facebook, just Dylan Cummings. Twitter, Dylan on Wheels. Instagram, Dylan on Wheels. LinkedIn, Dylan on Wheels.
Bang. He's covering all sorts, folks. So if you have any questions that we haven't been able to cover here on the podcast, genuine, man, get in touch with him. Ask questions. Be intrigued about it. Be in love with the game. And Dylan, I really, really have enjoyed the past hour. I can't believe an hour's flew by. But it's been really interesting to hear your journey and how you've kind of came to where you are. And I think you're just going to go from strength to strength, buddy. So thanks very much for coming on, guys. As per usual, Danny and James, thank you, lads, for coming on. And I suppose, Danny, it's over to you for the lightning round, big man.
Absolutely. I've had a week off, so I'm ready for this. But Dylan, I know you're an average fan of this podcast, and it's disappointing to say the least. You haven't got a T-shirt with "I love Danny's quickfire round" on it somewhere. But no, same again, mate. Same old Yeah, 10 questions, and just try and give me the first thing you can think of. All right. So, best moment in sport.
The whole World Championships, 2018.
Funniest player you've ever interviewed or played with.
Funniest interview, Gav Chowdhury and Dan Highcock from
Yeah,
That was
Champions League
unbelievable.
last year. Funniest player in the game, Alex Haluski.
Shout. When you were playing, the hardest trainer you ever played with or trained with.
Wait, sorry, say again.
When you were playing, the hardest trainer, who trained the hardest?
Nat Pattinson.
Again, from when you kind of playing days, toughest opponent can be a team or an individual.
Whenever we played England Central / West Mids at juniors.
Good shout. Who's your sporting hero?
Don't worry, Dylan. You can say me. It's fine. No, I'm joking. Please don't.
Or journalist hero, I guess.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Oh man, it's tough. Probably Teddy Bywater.
Nice. Tell us a fact about yourself. Anything.
I love Iron Brew.
Cliche, absolute cliche.
Love it.
We've kind of covered this a little bit already, but pick one aim for the future for yourself.
One aim for the future.
Yeah.
To work as a media manager for a pro club abroad.
Good stuff. Again, this is something you've already kind of mentioned a little bit as well. Have you got a favourite quote you live by or you like?
Live life in the present as much as you can.
Nice. Good shout. One live sports event you want to see?
Live. Tokyo 2021.
Yes. Good shout. And last one. What excites you about wheelchair basketball? And then I'm going to ask you this in two ways. So first of all, on a global scale, but also about what you know in Northern Ireland as well.
Global scale, just how tight the community is. Like the majority of people get on with each other. I know it's cliche, but it is like a family. Like everyone looks out for each other and respects each other, and it's great.
Good stuff. And what about Northern Ireland?
Yeah, in Northern Ireland, obviously you've got a great talent pathway with obviously James coming through. I think another guy that deserves a mention is Con Nagle. I think he's a fantastic player.
Yeah.
But I think, just how the sport's growing, and like obviously with guys like you and Phil, it can only go up from here. So yeah, you guys have been doing a great job for years, and you're continuing to do a fantastic job, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes in the future.
It's the only reason why we asked that question. The only reason. Our weekly,
yes.
Our weekly little conference booth. But look, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. I think the big takeaway for me has been just your journey, mate, from non-sporty to playing for a club to then moving into playing for your country to then going to journalism and do the highs. Unbelievable. Just quality, and just a massive thank you for your time. I think amazing.
Yeah, I'll jump on that as well. Thanks very much, Dylan, for coming on and giving us your time, dude. I really, really appreciate it. But I suppose we're coming to the end a wee bit here. So as per usual, check out our Disability Sport NI social media platforms for the episodes that come up for the podcast. Check out Dylan's Twitter handle and Insta and Facebook page. Any questions you have there, I'm sure he'll hit you back. And then I suppose the big thing, the reason why we're on the podcast to a certain extent, to start off with, was to continue to follow the public health agency's rules and regulations. So wash your hands, stay 2 meters apart, and we all know that social distancing will continue to save lives. So for me and the guys, all I have to say is stay home, stay active, and stay safe. Peace.